I think my fear going into it was having like a little bit of imposter syndrome of it was my first time like really building out a team. Like I've previously managed people, but like the onus on hiring was on me and like creating the onboarding and like the standards we previously talked about. So that was scary. And I think my advice would be to just like get out of your own head.
Mm.
Because I feel like once I started doing it and just kind of was like, all right, we have to do it. This is the only option, and just owned the process. It just started to like flow so naturally. So yeah, I feel like if I just got out of my own head and just let it happen and know that there were going to be mistakes along the way, but learned from them, that would be my advice.
This is Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition, your essential resource for mastering the unique challenges of social media marketing in the hospitality industry authentically. I'm your host, Mike Alton, and each episode we dive deep into the real issues, from evolving guest expectations to standout social campaigns, sharing insights and strategies you can put to work. Let's get started with today's episode.
Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition, where we're digging into the challenges, successes, and stories of social media community professionals in the industry, just like you. Subscribe to gain valuable insights that you'll be able to apply to your own work and social presence from each and every episode. Now, every social media manager knows this feeling, that constant pressure to create more content, engage with more followers, and stay active across yet more platforms. But what happens when you're doing this for not just one, but 25 different hotel properties, each with its own unique brand voice, target audience, and content needs? It's a challenge that keeps many hospitality marketers up at night, wondering if there's a breaking point. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the growing demands of social media management, you're not alone. Maybe you're currently juggling multiple property accounts, feeling like you're spread too thin. Perhaps you're worried about maintaining quality while keeping up with quantity, or maybe you're simply wondering if there's a better way to structure your social media operations. Well, today's guest knows exactly how that feels because she's lived it. As the corporate social media manager at Springboard Hospitality, Jessica Harrington found herself single-handedly managing social media for 25 different properties. But instead of burning out, she transformed her role and built a scalable system that not only improved results, but actually saved money. She's here to share how she did it, and more importantly, how you can too. Hey, Jessica, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for having me.
So glad to have you. I wonder if you could start by just painting a picture of what your typical day looked like when you were managing those 25 properties by yourself.
Yeah, sure. I think I'm going to kind of paint it more as like a monthly basis. So the beginning of my month was doing all the reporting for these 25 different properties. And then the second half of my month was focused on creating those content calendars. And then I feel like every day there was always something else too. So, community management was always happening. There's always designs that needed to be created. There's typically always at least one property that we were onboarding as well. So that was kind of like a special project that was happening in the background. And then with it being 25 properties, that was 25 different teams. So there was lots of communication and emailing and meetings that went on. So yeah, I was just getting pulled in a lot of different directions, you could say.
Yeah, that is a lot. Now, tell me a little bit about those properties. Where are they? What do they look like? What kinds of hotels are we talking about?
Yeah, so at Springboard, we have properties from Hawaii all the way to the East Coast. So we're in all the US time zones. Each is very different from the next. They're largely boutique properties, so just one off. So
Mm.
like you have like one brand that and then you have, like each property was its own different branding essentially. Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, and you mentioned onboarding, so that tells me this group is acquiring these new hotels, these boutique hotels, and bringing on their staff. And maybe they've got a marketing team, maybe they don't, maybe they've got social media, maybe they don't. Is that the kind of the situation you're running into?
Yeah, we have like a marketing team, and each property has its marketing manager. So I work very closely with all of them. And then, with the onboarding, it's interesting because sometimes there's a social presence and you have to
Mm.
like take that over. I'm sure most social media managers know the struggle of dealing with Meta and locked accounts and like trying to get back into them. So
Oh,
that was a big
yeah.
component. And then in other cases, they might not have had a social media presence at all. So then it's kind of starting from the ground up and building that. I think both are like equally time consuming in their own way.
Yeah, no kidding. So, what were some of the things that were going on, some of the key indicators that told you you couldn't keep going this way? This model of maintaining all these properties yourself just wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, there were several things. I think a big one for me was that I just didn't have time to like have a true strategy for each of these properties. I was just creating these calendars to like hit my minimum number of posts for the month. And then certain items started to fall to the wayside. So, for example, stories, that was always a manual task. You have to actually go into Instagram and post the story and like add in your text. And then community management, which is such an important one because you have guests reaching out and they want to know about like a room type or an amenity. And
Yeah.
I feel like if you don't respond to them fast enough, you can lose them, and that's dollars lost. And then I feel like lastly was like having to say no to my marketing managers and general managers when they're like, can we do giveaways and host influencers? And when are we going to launch that TikTok account? And I didn't have the bandwidth to do these things, but I knew they'd be so beneficial for these properties. And I mean, as part of organic social, I mean, there's so many platforms, and it's definitely, I think that's a bigger conversation of like, which one should you be on? And then as I kind of mentioned already, Springboard was just continuing to grow. We were bringing on properties. So it was like, if this is already unsustainable, it's only going to get more unsustainable if we have more properties to handle.
Yeah, that is a lot. So you decided at that point you needed help. Walk us through what that looked like, what that decision process was like, and the actual process, and maybe some of the concerns that you had, or maybe your management had before you were able to actually bring in help like that.
Yeah. So it was kind of timed with, we got a new corporate director of marketing, and he came in and he also was like, whoa, this is not sustainable. And I was like, yes, I need help. So he was really great. And we created this together. Yeah, he's been very supportive through it. So yeah, that was like the first thing of the two of us kind of aligning and being like, what is the best route forward? And we chose to go with hiring local contractors versus expanding the corporate social media team. And the reason we did this was because we wanted people who were actually in these destinations of where our properties were. So, like as I mentioned, we have properties in Hawaii all the way to the East Coast. Like I can't be in all of them. Like if we expanded our corporate team, like they wouldn't be able to go to all of them all the time. So yeah, we really want people who are like familiar with the destination, could go to the property on a monthly basis, get to know the property team, stay at the property if they wanted to, and like experience that whole check-in and like staying at the property. So that's kind of why we went that route.
That is hugely important. That ability to be on site. That's something we talked about in our very first episode with the social media manager for MGM Grand. And even though we say it like it's one property, it's actually multiple properties. But they're there in Vegas, and he's in Vegas, and he's able to walk around the different properties and create content and talk to folks and that sort of thing. So you found like were these agencies or freelancers or what in each individual city where you had a hotel?
So it was a little bit of all of it. Some of it
Okay,
freelancers. In some cases, we work with agencies as well. And then in some cases, we decided that a director of experience would be best to take on social media. So this either was maybe a role that already existed at the property, or because the property just had a lot of on-site activations, we decided that a director of experience would make sense, and then they could also take on that social media. So those were kind of the three main buckets that we were looking at. But in most cases, we moved forward with local contractors. And then some of them have just one property, some of them have a few properties. So, for example, we have a handful of Waikiki properties, and we have one contractor kind of managing all of those.
got it, got it. Well, I want to talk about how you're managing them. But before we get to that, I'd love if you could explore a little bit further about how you actually found and vetted some of these contractors, because I think folks listening who might be in a similar situation, they might struggle with the idea of where do I even start? How do I find somebody who I can trust to handle social media, a very public and prominent aspect of our marketing on behalf of a location?
Yeah. I feel like that one, I remember when I started the like hiring and onboarding process, saying to my friends, I was like, I'm my own little like HR agency. Like I'm really running it from, like having the job listing go up and then like hiring this person and training them. So yeah, that was definitely a scary one to do at first. But what I mostly
Yeah.
did was either first reach out to the GM, let them know this was happening and see if they had any recommendations. And then if they did not, then I put a posting on Indeed, and Indeed is where I found the majority of my contractors. And then, just kind of went through the standard interview process. And in that, what I was really looking for, as we've said a few times, was that they were in driving distance from the property and that they also had a good eye for photography. We wanted to be able to use content that they were going to the property and getting, and UGC content too is also I feel like much more the trend these days. I feel like TikTok kind of initiated that, and it's spread into Instagram and Facebook. So those were the two big components that I was looking for when hiring these people.
Super smart. So you went to Indeed.com, and that's
Yes.
where we're using to look at folks who had the right skill set. And you were checking how they were able to create visual content, because in this industry, that's what it's all about. I mean, you very rightly pointed out TikTok in particular. People are preferring UGC content, whether it's actually brand created UGC content that just looks in that very amateurish, homemade style, or if it's actually user generated content that we're surfacing and finding. So how did you manage all these people? Because you're absolutely right. You basically became your own HR department, right? How did you manage them? What kind of processes did you put into place to ensure that they were being consistent, that the work was going out was quality? Because it's it honestly sounds to me as though you just increased your workload rather than decreased it. So help us figure that out.
Yeah. So honestly, it was a year ago that this all began, this journey. So first it was identifying which properties we wanted to hire for first, and with that, which properties would take the most off of my plate. So those were the ones that I tried to get out of the way first. I found pretty quickly that it was a 2-month process from putting the job listing up to getting that first onboarding call happening. And I would do 2 to 3 properties at a time that I would be actively hiring for. So yes, initially it was a slight increase in workload because I still was managing these content calendars while also hiring for them. But once I got those first few out of the way, it just kind of started to flow very naturally. And then I already had my job listing set up. I already had the interview questions I wanted to get ready to go. I had my onboarding document. So it just kind of ebbed and flowed naturally after I got those first few properties out of the way.
Got it. Got it. Folks, we're talking with Jessica Harrington about what a struggle it can be to manage social media for multiple properties simultaneously and how to streamline that to just not go crazy. And I've got several more questions for her. But first, let's take a look at the tool you're going to want to use to build reports on all those properties.
Actually can't say enough great things about the reporting with Agora Pulse. I feel like that is my job security every month. My clients aren't that active on social media, which is why they have me manage their profiles for them. And when they get that report, it verifies that they're making a good investment.
The metrics downloads are so simple and easy to read, and it really helps me show where we are doing things right on social and where we need to improve.
So I think one of the main reasons why we decided to move to Agora Pulse is because it's a more comprehensive, integrated tool for all of our marketing needs. So rather than what we have had to do historically with Sprout, which is use certain parts of that platform that work really well and then supplement it with other outside tools, by moving to Agora Pulse, we were able to keep all of that into one technology platform, which is not only a time saver, but it also makes sure that our analytics and all of our reporting's on point because we're pulling all from the same source.
It's a really great platform for agencies. It makes it really easy to manage, but gives me really, really, really robust information that actually helps me develop better strategies for my clients and better plans of action.
So Jessica, I'd love if you could talk a little bit more about how you're managing all these different contractors. How many actual contractors do you have? Because it's not 25, right? It's fewer.
No, yeah, I think it's somewhere between 10 and 15 right now.
Got it. So you got 10 to 15 contractors all across the United States, 5 or 6 different time zones. How are you maintaining quality control and brand standards across all these contractors?
So I have monthly calls with all my contractors just to kind of talk about how the last month did and what we're looking ahead to do for the quarter and the next month. And then also the social media management tool we use, which is Hootsuite, has been really helpful in streamlining that like content calendar workflow. Originally, we were using Meta, which is not very user friendly and can be glitchy.
Yeah.
And all the feedback was just living in emails. So that has been really helpful in having like everything live in one platform. And then as far as maintaining brand standards, a lot of these properties didn't have a true brand book. The newer properties that we've been onboarding, it's been a much more common thing for them to go, if there isn't like a brand book already, that they go through like a brand immersion. So yeah, a lot of these properties, they just kind of had their brand kit with color, logo, and font. So it's actually been really cool this past year to have these contractors who are, like I said, getting to go to the property and like meet the team, bring these brands to life on organic social and kind of figure out what that brand standard is. It's been exciting to see. I feel like they've been the ones kind of creating the standard, and now going into 2025, I feel like, we had our trial and error phase. We know kind of like what works and what doesn't work. And also being able to kind of like pull from like like this is working for one of our Hawaii properties. Like maybe we test that out for one of our like California ones. So yeah, it's just been a great, learning experience this past year. And I think in 2025, we'll continue to hone in on those brand standards.
That point about the brand book really took me aback because I hadn't thought about that, but you're absolutely right. We're not talking about 16 franchisees from the same chain where we're all using the same logo, the same brand kit, everything like that. Oh no, everybody's completely different. And to your point, they're coming into this without that often, and so that was unexpected to me. What other kinds of unexpected challenges did you run into, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges was just kind of the shift in my role and kind of going from being that person in the day to day, creating the content calendar, doing the community management, to taking on this leadership role. I feel like I can be a perfectionist sometimes, or am sometimes of the mindset of like, if you want something done right, do it yourself, which you cannot do when you were relying on other people to help you and like do these things. So like becoming a teacher has been something like a learning curve for me this year. I think I have very gracious contractors and they're all very amazing. But yeah, there's definitely I think for my own sake too, like kind of standardizing the process and being like, okay, like we're all going to submit our content calendars via Hootsuite, and we're all going to create our story designs in Canva, and it's all going to be due like on these dates. Just so I can maintain some sense of like sustainability and not being like pulled in multiple different directions. So yeah, I think just continuing to perfect what that process is with them, and continuing to be a teacher and showing them how to do things so they can get better at it. And then that's like something I can hand off and not be on my plate anymore.
Got it. Got it. Now, I imagine each one of these hotels has its own booking and reservation system, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how are you measuring the impact of social media when everyone's got their own channels and their own channels are all feeding into their own booking reservation systems? How are you getting a hold of how well they're all doing?
That is the question I get asked all the time. So exciting. 2024 was actually the first year we set KPIs for organic social media. Previously, it had just kind of been brand awareness was our goal. And a big part of that was like, I didn't have the bandwidth to have this like goal to work towards. So that was an exciting thing for 2024. And those KPIs that we were looking at were average reach rate, and then average engagement rate by reach, and follower growth. And the reason that we chose to hone in on those three was it kind of paints the picture of, okay, how many unique users are we reaching? And then of those, who are then engaging with our content and ideally choosing to follow us. So I've been looking at those numbers, actually been doing my yearly reporting this past week, and it's looking good. It looks like we're hitting a lot of our KPIs, which is awesome. Setting those for the first time was interesting, of like how to land on it. Organic social can be so volatile, especially when you have smaller followings, which I guess, again, all your properties are so unique. So it like really varies from like properties that have under 1,000 followers to ones that are like maybe going to hit 20K this year. So yeah, it was everyone got a different goal, and I kind of chose that based off of how they had done previously, if there was data to pull from, and then what the yearly averages were for the industry, and kind of creating a number based off that. So having a year under our belt, I feel like it'll be a lot easier to set goals, more realistic goals for this year. And then another big one for this year, and a question that's always being asked, is revenue. Like, how much revenue is organic social bringing in? And an exciting program that I'm hoping to roll out that I actually can't take credit for. My colleague did this at another property and saw lots of success, is an affiliate code program. So when we're working with influencers, giving them their own unique affiliate code that they can then, when they post their stories or their in-feed post or whatever the exchange may be, they can put that code out there for their followers. And this will just help us better track the success of that collaboration, and then ideally be able to point to revenue that they were able to bring in. So yeah, revenue is a big one for me, and kind of thinking about how we can point to revenue for organic social.
That's such a cool use of influencers. In fact, you guys have a gorgeous property here in St. Louis, Frontenac. So if you need an influencer in the St. Louis area, just let me know. But what
All
other
right.
tools and platforms are you using to handle all of this? You talked about Hootsuite, you talked about Canva. I assume you're using an affiliate management tool. What else are you using to kind of wrap your head around everything that's going on?
Yeah. Hootsuite and Canva are the two big ones. I personally love Trello. I use that to stay organized. I feel like I gave the option to my contractors if they wanted to use that for their workflow, and then it's something I could go in and look at as well. But I don't know if that one quite stuck, which is okay. I feel like to each their own on how they're staying organized. But yeah, that's really the two main ones. And then there's Excel spreadsheets with information. So influencer tracking that lives in an Excel spreadsheet, giveaways, reporting. Yeah, Excel is a big one.
Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that deep dive. If you have any other advice that you could give, social media managers who are working with multiple properties, they're feeling overwhelmed, maybe they're doing it all themselves. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say, so yeah, like I said, a year ago is kind of when we dove into this. It was kind of all right, we had been talking about it all end of 2023, and it was time to launch this program. And I remember saying to my manager, I was like, I'm so excited for this, but it's also so daunting to be taking on this new, not even just project, creating this new program. And I think my fear going into it was having a little bit of imposter syndrome of, it was my first time really building out a team. I've previously managed people, but the onus on hiring was on me, and creating the onboarding and the standards we previously talked about. So that was scary. And I think my advice would be to just get out of your own head. Because I feel once I started doing it and just kind of was all right, we have to do it. This is the only option, and just owned the process. It just started to flow so naturally. So yeah, I feel if I just got out of my own head and just let it happen, and know that there were going to be mistakes along the way, but learn from them, that would be my advice. And yeah, also I guess too, your team, they were so supportive, and I think that was really amazing, and feeling comfortable leaning on them for support when I needed it, especially in kind of introducing this new program to the GMs, and then that also would trickle to ownership. So yeah, having a fully supportive team behind me. So yeah, don't be afraid to lean on your team members as well.
That's exactly one point that I was going to underscore that you mentioned at the outset, was that you had a champion inside your organization who happened to be your manager. Folks, It doesn't have to necessarily be your manager, but you got to have somebody in the organization who's going to support you, who sees what you're going through, understands it to at least some extent, and can back you up. So Jessica, you've been absolutely amazing. This has been such a treat getting that insight into how things are going over at Springboard. For folks who want to learn more about the company or about you, they want to reach out and connect, where should they go?
Well, Springboard is on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So definitely follow us along there. And yeah, we'd be happy to answer any questions. And then, yeah, you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn too. I believe you're going to share that link as well. So happy to help support any other social media managers out there who are feeling the same struggle. Because, yeah, I know it can be a tough initial conversation, but change can definitely happen.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, all of you, for listening. She's right. We'll have her LinkedIn link and all the other links that we talked about in the show notes today. Don't forget to find the Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition on Apple and drop us a review. I'd love to know what you think. Until next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Social Pulse Podcast Hospitality Edition, hosted by Mike Alton and powered by AgoraPulse, the #1 rated social media management solution. Discover more at agorapulse.com. Enjoyed the episode? Please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Your feedback drives our content.